Right, hi guys, how you doing? I'm Timmy Foodie. You can follow me on YouTube, Instagram at Timmy_foodie. Subscribe, like, share, whatever you can do to help this channel get crack-a-lacking. That would be awesome. Sorry about that. We have a text message from Samantha, who will be on the podcast again soon. You can also follow me on, I've got a few podcasts. I've got Timmy Foodie podcast, and we've also got a podcast called Harmonic Whiskey Tales, where we just get drunk and get silly and talk a lot of nonsense. So today, what we're gonna be doing is, we're gonna be cooking some ribs. I just got myself a new Traeger grill, which is, it's like an offset smoker, but it's kind of this like pellet grill thing, so it's pretty sweet for doing things like ribs and briskets and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to be doing a bit of experimenting with that over the next few weeks and months. Let's get cracking with this. So what I'm going to do, we're going to do ribs. I'm going to make a nice coleslaw and my homemade barbecue sauce. And I'll take you through the process of what I'm going to cook, how I'm going to do it, how I make my sauce, how I do my coleslaw. And yeah, we'll just kind of start here and see where it takes us, really. Hopefully this kind of camera position works. I can't really fit me in and the food with just my one camera at the moment, but if we can get this channel going, then I'll be able to get more cameras and get a bit more elaborate and higher production levels and everything. But hopefully this is good for the moment. I figured this was the best thing, so you can actually see what I'm cooking, what I'm chopping, and you don't need to see me really. So yeah, here we go. So let's start with the ribs. So I've got this rack of ribs from Millen's Free Range Butchers, which are my favourite butchers in Sydney. You can go to millens.com.au and check out their what they sell. It's an awesome place. So all free range meats. So this is a nice free range rack of ribs. I think this is a Kurabuta pork, which is really nice. It's got a real nice sweetness to it. So yes, so hopefully you can see what's going on. I might clear this shit out of the way a bit. This is all the ingredients we're going to need, but I'll go through that because that's mostly stuff for the sauce that we're going to do. And it's a super simple sauce. Well, actually, maybe it isn't. I don't know. Once I've started cooking, we'll see if it's simple or not. And I'm going to really try and not swear on this because I want my niece to be able to watch this. But if I do drop the odd effing and jeffing, I do apologise. Or maybe beep it out, who knows. What I also want to try and do is cook in real time as much as possible. Obviously for this, you're not going to sit with me for 5 hours while I cook these ribs, but for all the process that I'm doing in terms of prep, chopping, cooking things in the pan, I'm going to try and keep it real time as much as possible and then be very specific with timings if I can. I do tend to go a bit freestyle with things sometimes, which isn't the easiest to follow, but I guess I'll get better with that as we go. So yeah, so let's start with these ribs and then we'll go on to prepping the stuff for the sauce and we'll get that cracking. But I want to get these ribs on first. So it's pretty simple process that we're going to do for this. You can trim your ribs, but my butcher has kind of trimmed these already pretty nicely for me. So because we're going to wrap these in foil, I'm just checking there's no big sharp bits sticking out around the edges of the bones and stuff. I think it's pretty good. I mean, this end bit's been cut off here, but I think that's cool. So just always wash your hands after you touch meat like this as well. So simple thing, we got some mustard, just some American mustard is good. And then in here, it does say gourmet organic sage, but it isn't. It's a bit of paprika, just sweet paprika, and then salt and pepper. You can get these mixes, I think I've got one here, which is a Texas barbecue mix by Spice & Co, which if you're in Australia, it's a pretty good brand. And this has got sweet paprika, smoked paprika, chipotle, onion, garlic, parsley, pepper, sea salt, cayenne, coriander and cumin. It is actually a pretty nice rub. And it's got no crap in it. I was in the barbecue shop the other day and they were they sell these American rubs and stuff, but they're full of crap, like just all this kind of stuff that I don't think you really need in there, like MSG and bloody oil and anti-caking agents, and I don't know why the hell you're going to need that sort of stuff. But anyway, this is pretty simple. So it's just paprika, salt and pepper. Because I'm putting this in the smoker, which I should probably check on that I haven't burnt anything down. Hang on a second. Let's just check this out. Yeah, we're good. That's just coming up to temperature. We're going to be cooking this around 130 to 135 degrees centigrade, which is around that 265 to 275 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything around that 130 plus or minus a few degrees is probably going to be okay. So sorry if I waffle, I do tend to waffle a little bit. So, and I do tend to try and do things on the fly a bit. When I'm going to try and keep that in check as much as possible, but it might happen, which is why I'm filming it, because it's a bit easier for me to do this. When I try and write a recipe, I just freestyle too much. So anyway, so first off, we've got our ribs. They've been trimmed quite nicely already. I've checked for pointy bits, all seem good. So what we're going to do is give our mustard a shake, and then we're just going to, let's just do the underside first. Now, some of this stuff you could just kind of check and just trim a few things off. I'm going to do an episode just about knives, I think, which I will get back to. I'm really obsessed with knives, so I think it's good to take you through what's a good knife and what isn't. And I'll try and do it on all budgets, because I know some people, you know, it's difficult to afford the really fancy knives, which is what I tend to do, unfortunately, which does hurt my bank balance. But once you start with Japanese knives, you can't really stop. So, so yeah, this is looking pretty good. What we're going to do first is, now hang on, I saw a tip the other day. I've been watching this Franklin's barbecue guy on this masterclass website, and he always says, keep one hand as your dirty hand and one hand as your clean hand. So I just have to wash my hands in because I forgot that. So we're gonna use my left hand to do this and my right hand to do the smothering, and that way you're not getting any cross-contamination of raw meat onto stuff you're going to be holding later. So that's quite an important thing to remember. So just try and keep things, yeah, try and get into the habit of doing that if you can, or if not, just have some hot soapy water in the sink, just ready to go, and like a towel to dry yourself off. So we're going to just do a little bit of mustard. So we're doing this, we don't need too much, I'll probably put too much on there, but we're doing this to help with the rub to stick onto the ribs. Plus it gives it a nice flavour as well. So if you're not that into mustard, don't worry, because it's not really going to impart a huge amount of flavour into it. It's just really there to help with the sticking of this stuff, which is my rub, which is probably, I don't know, 50-50 salt, pepper, and then like a teaspoon or so in this kind of size thing of paprika. Sweet paprika as well. You don't need smoked paprika because we're putting it in a smoker, so that's going to impart enough flavour. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sprinkle along as we go, as even as possible across the thing, just like this. Try not to waste too much of it, because pepper is quite expensive, so you don't want to waste it too much. And then just kind of pat it in like that. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, and I've really got to try and get the hang of this, and then we're just going to roll that over on that side. So I'm always doing the slightly less pretty side first, because this side is the side we're going to have up on the barbecue, and that's the side we're going to see when we kind of serve it. So that's a good tip I picked up from that Franklin's guy. Well worth watching if you haven't checked it out, the masterclass thing. it's there's loads of great cooking stuff on there, so I'm probably going to be regurgitating a lot of that on here. And I guess with my style of cooking, it's quite just simple-ish. It does get a bit complicated, but it's all pretty simple and just home cooked kind of stuff. Nothing like overly fancy or pretentious, because I can't really be bothered with all that sort of stuff. So just everyday kind of food, that's kind of what I'm into really. So I do get a little bit elaborate sometimes, but it's never too complicated. So again, that's some mustard, and then again we're going across with the season. Across we go, nice and even. If you've got an area, again I picked this up from the Franklins guys, if you've got an area of more fat, put a bit of extra seasoning on it, especially pepper, because it, with the smoker, it needs texture to capture the smoke, apparently. This is what I learnt today. So and we're just going to put a bit of extra on and just pat that on the sides here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Like I said, we're a bit limited with camera angles at the moment, but I think this is probably the best one to do. So so there we go. So when I put it on, I'm going to just push it up a bit and kind of condense it up a little bit like this. I think that's pretty good. Just a little extra sprinkle. And you're not really rubbing it in, you're just sort of patting it on just so it holds. I think that's good. We don't want to over season it. So yeah, so there we go. So there's our rib rack sorted. I'm just going to wash my hands. Actually, no, wait a minute. What I'm going to do, I've got like a little wire rack thing here. I'm going to actually put the ribs on there and put it onto the smoker like that. Just, I think it's a bit easier to then transport it around once it comes off the barbecue. So we're just going to do that. I can use two hands now because I'm going to just wash them in a minute. And then there we go. We're just going to compress that up a bit. Get that in a nice shape. Sorted. So there's our ribs. So that was just mustard, salt, pepper, paprika. On it goes. And there we go. Ribs are on 130 degrees roughly. That's one thing I noticed with that Traeger grill. You can't like, it has to click to certain temperatures. You can't say really specifically, because I guess it has a range that it keeps it in, which I guess is okay. So it's got a setting on there for 135 degrees centigrade, which should be okay for these ribs. You wouldn't really want to go much hotter than that, but I guess that's the hot peak it gets to. So hopefully that's all going to be okay. So what we're going to do now is just prep this. We'll get the sauce going and just bubbling away, because we're going to need that to spritz over the ribs in a bit. That'll be in like 3 hours, so we've got a bit of time. And then we'll get onto the coleslaw in a bit, which you can kind of do, prepare it, get it done and get it in the fridge, because it needs about an hour or so just to develop some flavours. So for this sauce, I mean, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. We've got some garlic, which we'll do a bit of, and onions. And that's kind of it really. So with knives, yeah, I'll do an episode and talk properly about that, but obviously a sharp knife is good. Sorry about that. Right, so what we're going to do first is, actually let's just, and I apologise in advance for this beepy fucking induction thing, it's really annoying. So I apologise in advance for all the annoying beeps that it makes. We're just going to, and the fan noise, so hopefully that's not too distracting. I'll just try and constantly talk over it. So, oh, this knife is, I've just bought this knife. These are my favourite knives. This is a Fujiwara knife. It is super sharp. So, yeah, be really careful if you're also holding a sharp knife. Well, obviously. I always like to keep a little bowl in the kitchen while I'm cooking, which is for my like scraps that I don't use, and that can go in your composter. It just helps to keep the kitchen a bit tidier, because I can be super messy in the kitchen. So yeah, just It's a nice little tip. It's like portable kitchen bin, I call it. And then if you are going to use it in your composter, you can just keep all your food waste in one thing, and then your other scraps in another thing. But although I don't think you can put onions in a composter, but I seem to remember. So this is really annoying me. Don't you hate it when you get a bloody onion that does this, little motherfucker? Here we go. I've not done very well with my swearing thing, I do apologise. So what we're going to do, because we're going to whiz this up, the size of the onions isn't too important, but I don't want to go too small with it because we are going to whiz them up. This knife is fucking ridiculous. So what I want to do is just have it like this. I'm going to do a chopping special thing, I guess, but if you just keep paying attention to what I'm doing with and how I'm holding stuff, you'll get a few good tips for how you should be kind of chopping stuff. So for this, I've got a flat edge here that I've cut that makes it sturdy, and then I'm just going to do one down here. So rather, I mean, you can do it like this, but if you want to hold it securely, you can go kind of either side like this, and then just push the knife down through the onion, and then put that down like that to one side. And then we'll do the same with this one, just down through and to one side like that. And then what I want to do with these cuts is actually the way that the lines of the onion are going, like this way, we're going to cut with those, and we're just going to cut in, I don't know, 1/4 inch or 1 centimetre little chunks like that. And so as you can see, it's kind of like little, can you see that? I don't know, yeah. And then we'll do the same with this. Sorted, there we go. If you're using a knife like this, with mine, the exposed core of it is actually not stainless steel, it's a carbon steel, so it will start to off colour and rust. If you're doing onions, that will go quite quickly. So once I've done with this bit of garlic, I'm going to give the knife a rinse and dry it off. If you go up into the higher end knives, which are more carbon steel, then you do have to be careful of that. And this knife is so good. Look, it's got a little, you see it's got a little notch which just fits perfectly for how you hold it. It's just, oh, it's just the best knife. And it's nice and wide for doing your smashing thing. So with the garlic, I've just gone through the stem bit, hold it down one side, give it a smash. It comes out nicely. Now, if your garlic has, open it up and just pull out this little middle bit. If it's got a green, can you see that? Is it going to focus? It's like a little green stemmy thing. You don't really need that. It's not the most edible of things. This bit of garlic isn't the best, unfortunately. That's the one thing you'll find in Australia, is the garlic isn't particularly good. You need a colder climate for garlic. So if you can get it, then there's something called Snowy Mountains garlic, which is from up in the Snowy Mountains. And because their climate's a bit colder, you get much nicer garlic. It's juicier because the cold climate, the garlic kind of builds up this kind of, I don't know, juice in it to resist it from the cold. So yeah, I've just roughly chopped it, and then I'm just gonna smash the knife through it a few times. Again, because we're going to whiz this a bit at the end, you don't have to be too precious with it. So yeah, so there's like 1 clove of garlic, 1 onion, just kind of roughly chopped. Don't worry too much with it. We've got our pan on here. It's on about 6 on this induction thing. And this is another really good tip. This is from IKEA, this thing. It was like $35, and it's great. It works fine. You need to have pans that work with induction, so you do have to check that. But so just wash my hands. Actually, yeah, let's just rinse this knife quick as well. It's great. It's for the money, it's just brilliant. You can't really, most other induction pans are like 70 to 80 bucks, and apparently they're not as good as this one. So there we go, there's my knife just rinse. You can already see the core discolouring. I don't know if you can see it, you probably can't see that anyway, whatever. So pan on about a sort of medium to high heat. That's probably a bit hot. I'm going to just turn that down a bit. Jesus, this does get hot pretty quick. And then onions in. Hopefully the crackling isn't too off-putting. we're going to do a little bit of salt really quickly. I'm going to turn that down if it's a bit hot. This is the only problem with me cooking this here is my my extractor fan is over there. So I've just put a little pinch of salt, just a little bit more, and some fresh black pepper. I like to do that quite soon into the cooking because I find the salt and the pepper help to break the onion down a bit nicer. And what we're doing here, we're just getting a little bit of colour on the edges, but that's too quick, so I want to be much lower. With onions, what you need to do is cook them quite slowly initially, unless you're stir frying, and then that temperature I had, it was perfect, but that was a bit hot. But if that does happen and it is too hot, don't panic, just turn it down as quick as you can, and you want that kind of gentle sizzle you can hear there, that's about right. And we just want to really slowly cook that down, and the onions will start to get translucent. They kind of just soften and go a bit translucently and kind of shiny and yeah, beautiful. So we're just going to do that. Now I've lost a bit of heat in that. I'm going to put this garlic in. If you put that garlic in too early, it will just burn. And to be honest, what I could have done is, which I didn't think of, I could have just left that garlic clove whole. It's a bit of an Italian trick they do in pastas. You leave it whole, peel it, put it in, get a bit of colour on it, then add your onions and whatever else, and then it cooks down and softens, and then right at the end you just mush it up because it goes all soft and sweet and delicious. So yeah, so you can do it that way, and that's actually really good. And then also because you're frying it in the oil initially whole, you get a nice infusion of garlic flavour through the oil, which is really tasty. So yes, so there we go. So it's just onions and garlic, and we're just going to keep that cooking down. You can't really bugger off anywhere at this point because it's actually quite important to keep an eye on it. I mean, we're going to be doing this for about 10 or 15 minutes, so at this point you probably don't want me to just sit here and chat shit for 15 minutes while this happens, so I will probably cut forward a bit and come back to you on this, but I might still natter along anyway, so if I say anything interesting and poignant then I can put it in, but I don't think that's very likely. Barbecue sauce, it's pretty simple really. The main thing we're going to do initially, we're going to cook these onions down. We're almost making a pasta sauce really. We're going to get these onions down and garlic down so they're all nice and translucently, and they start to go a little bit golden light browny coloured, but not like caramelized, like hot. They just gradually will change colour, which I'll show you in a minute. And once we got to that point, we're going to put in these 2 tins of just tinned tomatoes. I got these like baby Roma ones, but there's a great Italian shop down the road for me that do brilliant tinned tomatoes that are from this specific region in Italy. I think they're at the base of Mount Vesuvius, and so the soil is just so unique, and they just grow the best tomatoes. So that's what I normally get, but I couldn't be bothered with it's Christmas Eve today, by the way, so it is chaos in Sydney with people last minute shopping and buying all sorts of nonsense. So so yeah, essentially we'll do that and we'll get these tins of tomatoes in. Normally I'll put in a bit of vinegar, like balsamic, but because we're doing this barbecue thing, I'm tempted to go to use some apple cider vinegar maybe rather than caramelized balsamic, but we'll see. So essentially we're going to do that. We put the tomatoes in, we put in we'll do apple cider vinegar because I've got it here, and then we're going to do some sugar. I've got some coconut sugar, It's just like organic, unrefined coconut sugar. With sugars, you want to be keep moving these around every minute or so. Yeah, just keep an eye on them. We really don't want to be cooking this quickly, so it just should be just sizzling like that. Can you hear? Yeah. So, what was I talking about? Sugar. Yeah, with sugars, you just want to. I'm just checking on the barbecue to make sure nothing's catching fire. I think we're good. Yeah, so the less refining that has gone through, or, I don't know, the less process that's gone into the sugar, the better it's going to be to use. So I have a granulated sugar that I buy that's just an unrefined caster sugar, and it's not pure white, it's like slightly light brown coloured. Rapadura sugar is really good. That's just like a cane sugar. Essentially, it's like panela sugar. It's like an evaporated cane juice. That's really good sugar to use. So that's the kind of sugars I tend to use when I'm sweetening stuff, rather than using like a pure white caster sugar or normal kind of sugar, because if it's really white, then it's had a lot of crap done to it, which you don't really want. So and I think that sugar's worse for you than this sort of sugar, to be honest with you. So so this is doing its thing nicely. So where was I? Yes, we're going to do tins in there, bit of vinegar, bit of sugar, let that bubble away, keep it stirring, and just let that really gently simmer, so that cooks right down to a really nice thick sweet tomato sauce. And then at that point we're going to add our barbecue vibes to it, which the primary thing is your Worcestershire sauce. I always use Lea & Perrins, and then you've got a malt vinegar, just standard malt vinegar really. You could get fancy stuff if you want, but anyway. And then we're going to probably add a little bit more sugar to it, but we don't want it super sweet. So I hope the initial stage of what I'm adding within the tomatoes will be enough, but we'll see how it goes. See, this is I don't know if you can see, the garlic has actually sort of not burnt but caramelized a bit too quick, which is I don't really want that, but it's all right. It won't be the end of the world. So I think my theory of just a whole clove of garlic in there at the beginning is going to be the way to go with this. But anyway, we can get back to that. So it doesn't matter. It's going to have so much done to it after this point that I think we're going to be okay. So so yes. So once we've got this cooked down, tomatoes in, sugar, bit of apple cider vinegar. I might put in a bit of balsamic. Why the fuck not? I've actually got a caramelized fig glaze, which is balsamic vinegar and fig, which is really good. So I'll probably put a bit of that in as well, because you know, if you've got it, you may as well use it. And then I've just got a pretty standard balsamic vinegar of Medina. This isn't the best stuff. I bought it, I think, because it was all they had, but it isn't great. It's, yeah, you can get better ones, but I don't like wasting food, so we've got to use it up. So we'll just let this tick along, and then I'll be back in a few minutes. Let's say about 10 more minutes, and then we should be good. Okay, we are back. We've been about 10 minutes since we got to this point, and as you can see, the onions have started to take a little bit of colour. They gone a little bit caramelised on the edges. I think my initial heat was too high, which we didn't really want, so just yeah, be wary of that. It's fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to transfer this into a slightly deeper pan to put the tomatoes in, because if you're in a low pan like this, it's going to just bubble and go everywhere. I want to have a lower pan just so you could see what was going on. So that's at a good point. So I'm going to just transfer this pan onto here. We'll just turn that up a bit to get that going. Which was paused for some reason, which I didn't know you could do. And then I'm just gonna transfer this in here. So, but you won't need to do this. So just when you do yours, do it in a deep pan like this, because it'll just be a bit easier. So we've transferred the onions into the pan. I've just got that going a bit more. We've got some nice caramelisation going along. We're going to put in a splash of apple cider vinegar. We're going to put in a sprinkle of sugar, about a tablespoon initially. Just give that a stir up. And that will form a nice kind of sweet, sour, watch out because you'll get crazy from the fumes. But then if you can kind of see in there, it's kind of, sorry, it's the beeping. So that's good. So it's about a tablespoon of sugar, about a tablespoon of vinegar, whatever vinegar you can get really. So apple cider vinegar, balsamic's good. I might put in a bit of this caramelised fig, why not? Just for a bit of extra sweetness. And that kind of balsamic-y vibe to it. But because we're doing a barbecue-y sauce and not an Italian thing, I think doing a apple cider rather than primarily balsamic's the way to go. Tin of tomatoes, which you spill on the side there, which is great. In there, wash my hands. Just get that stirred up. And I mean, this is a really great sauce just for anything really. So if you're going to make a pasta sauce, I quite often start with this, cook up a big batch of it, and this will keep in the fridge for, you know, 3 or 4 days easily, maybe more. So you can knock up a big batch of this and turn this into anything you want. So you can turn it into the base for a bolognese or just a real simple pasta sauce dish. It's kind of really up to you really. So, but yeah, it's a great little sauce and super simple really. So, and depending on, these are like little, almost like cherry tomatoes, so they've got a bit of nice natural sweetness to them. And if they're like that, you can let them warm up a bit and then just kind of smush them with your spoon on the side of the thing, on the side of the pan, just to kind of release all that good stuff inside. But they will, as you're cooking it, just naturally kind of break apart eventually anyway. So, yeah, so they're pretty good. They're pretty good. And they'll just kind of do their thing really. So, yeah. The one thing I noticed with these is they've actually got their skins on, which normally the kind of plum tomatoes that you normally, like the whole plum tomatoes in tins, wouldn't have the skins on. So I guess these are too small and fiddly to do that with. But because we're whizzing it up, I think we'll be all right. So this can just stir, bring to a gentle simmer, and then this is going to be left for at least an hour just to cook right down and go all thick. It will start to darken and go a richer red. At the moment you can see it's quite a vibrant red. So we just want that to cook down and bubble away nicely. And like I said, if you've got a shallower pan, it's going to bubble and start splotching tomato sauce everywhere. So that's why a taller pan is a bit better. And if you've got an induction hob, once it's going, just turn it right down so it's really gently simmering. You just barely want a few little bubbles here and there. You don't want too much more than that. If you're in a hurry, you can cook it quicker and it will reduce down quicker, but because we're doing, you know, because we're slow cooking these ribs, we've got time, so there's no real rush for this. And if you've done this in advance and cooked up a big batch of this and popped it in the fridge, you can yeah, you can just use it whenever you want. So my mate's here, this is bubbling away. We'll be back in, we'll give this about an hour and then come back. Now my friend was here and I have been drinking whiskey, so I'm a little bit more drunk than I was earlier, but so I'm probably gonna F and Jeff a little bit more than I was, so I apologise in advance. Delicious. I feel like I should just keep drinking now that I've started, but I guess that's a slippery slope. So, when we left off, we were reducing down our sauce. That's cooked for about an hour. just gently simmering away, bubbling down, reducing down. Once it gets to a nice thick consistency, which you can kind of see, it's quite thick like that. And all I did was just whiz it up with my stick blender thing, one of these jobbies. And then that gives you a nice thick, reduced, unctuous, delicious sauce. So I've got that on like a nice low heat, just doing its thing. Now what we're going to do is we are going to make the barbecue sauce. So we've got this really good base. Remember, that was onions, garlic, bit of olive oil, salt, pepper. Cook that down. Add in your apple cider vinegar and some coconut sugar. And a little bit of this awesome fig glaze stuff. I'm just going to move these back so you can see what the hell is going on when I'm chopping. So now we're going to add our barbecue sauce elements to it, which is going to turn this into, from our kind of nice rich tomato sauce into our delicious barbecue sauce. Now, if you were going to cook a big batch of this to use through the week, then I'd maybe have done like 4 or 5 tins of tomatoes, and then you'd have shitloads of it. You can just portion a bit of this off, stick it in a Tupperware container, stick it in the fridge or the freezer, and it would be perfect. But we're just going to turn all this straight into a barbecue sauce. So remember, this was 2 tins, 1 onion, 1 clove of garlic, a bit of seasoning, sorted. So now what we're going to do is get your Worcestershire sauce. Probably about 2 tablespoons, but I'm just going to wing it because that's what I like to do. So we're just going to splosh a load of this in. You can't really go wrong with Worcestershire sauce. You just fucking stick it in and see what happens, really. I mean, it's good stuff. So it's probably about 2 tablespoons. Then, I'm making a mess. Then we're going to get our malt vinegar. I have one open already, so we're just going to use that. So this is just standard, naturally fermented malt vinegar. So that's probably about 2 tablespoons worth that's in there. I need to remember where the fucking camera is. I keep going too high. So I think I'm just going to put 1, 2. Oh fuck it, I'll just put it all in. That was about 2 tablespoons, maybe give or take. I'm going to put in a little squeeze of lemon juice as well. I might put a bit more in. That's just like a wedge, just squeezed in, sorted. So there's lemon, Worcestershire sauce, malt vinegar. I'm just going to turn it up a bit to get it going again. Give it a smell. Smelling pretty good. Now, I don't want to go too hardcore with the sugar because I don't want it to be like really sweet, this sauce, but I'm going to put, that's probably about another tablespoon of this coconut sugar. Now, what I will say is if you don't want to do cook your own tomato sauce down like this, you can just use like a general tomato ketchup. So, you know, what have we got in here? Just like a generic tomato ketchup-y sort of thing. You can just use that. Just add tomato ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, vinegar, sugar, and get that simmering down. You know, that's a way to do it if you want to, but I think this way you just have a bit more control over the sweetness of it. So you can decide whether you want a really sweet barbecue sauce or if you want a less sweet barbecue sauce. I'm going to put in some more Worcestershire sauce. So the colour of this isn't going to be like your traditional, oh God, we're bubbling away. I should probably put an apron on. Once you've whizzed it up, it does tend to splash a bit more. So you don't want it to be, I don't want it to be super bubbling really high. I just want it to bring it back up to a simmer and just let it reduce down again. We're about, let me check my time, we're about 2 hours into our cooking time on the ribs. I've gone in and I've got this sprayer thing which I've put apple cider vinegar in it. If you buy one of these new, you can you can put stuff for food in it, it's absolutely fine. So this is just apple cider vinegar and that's it. And then I've only done it about once, but I've just sprayed over the ribs just to keep things a bit moist. I did forget to you're supposed to put a pan of water with the barbecue to keep the humidity up, which keeps the moisture in the meat, which I forgot for the first hour and a half. But I remembered, and now that's in there. And it's just a pan of hot water that you just, like, it's one of these pans, but a bit smaller. It's just in there with the ribs. It just keeps the moisture level up inside the cooking chamber. So yeah, that's just doing its thing. It's smelling like it needs a bit more sugar. So I'm going to put a bit more in. And I think that's pretty good. And then we're just going to let that cook right down again and reduce by about half, so it goes nice and thick again. Yeah, it smells pretty good. So if you wanted to make that a bit spicy, at this stage you can add in some chili pepper, some cayenne pepper, even some fresh red chili if you want to dice it up and chuck it in, or some dry red chilies. You can either get that that's the sprinkles of red chili that you can just sprinkle in, or you can get some of those whole dried ones you see in like Asian supermarkets. Just get a couple of those, chuck them in, and then you can take them out at the end, and that'll impart a nice spiciness deep into the sauce, which is splashing. But I don't really want spicy today, so I'm not going to put spicy in there. So, but it's entirely up to you. If you want to go a bit spicy, then go for it. And then obviously the amount you put in is really up to you. So just see how you go with it. Don't go too crazy because you don't want to overpower the pork. But it's up to you. Coleslaw. So, God, everything's getting a bit messy in the kitchen. I've gone completely against what I said by trying to not let things get too messy. I'm going to grab some carrots. Maybe I don't want to cook. I always make too much coleslaw, so I don't want to go too crazy with it. I'm just going to make a smaller batch. I think 3 carrots are good, and these are organic carrots because you just get more flavour out of them. I've lost my fucking peeler. Where is it? Oh, it's over here. Sorry about the swearing, I'll try not to. So again, I'm just going to do this in real time, so you just have to put up with me peeling shit. But this gives you a good indication of how long it's going to take to like cook this stuff. So for the carrots, we're going to grate them, and for the cabbage, we'll probably just cut them with a knife. But you can actually use like a peeler like this if you want to, and just like do that with it. But I like using knives, so I'm going to use a knife. And I got this new knife the other day, so it seems silly to not use it when I have the opportunity. So it's 2 carrots, maybe 3 is good. And then we've got some nice apples as well. And with the apple, I'm going to grate one of them and I'm going to chop the other one, because when you grate an apple, it goes quite fine, but you get quite a lot of juice out of it, which I want that kind of sweet, like the sweet notes from the apple coming through. But then I also want the crunch from the apple, so that's why I'll hand chop one of them. So you get these kind of like different textures. Well, I'm just going to turn that down. So that's just bubbling away really nicely now, just doing its thing. You'll know if it's going too much because it will start exploding out and hitting you with like molten hot bits of barbecue sauce, which you don't want. So if it's doing that, turn it down a bit. So here we go, we're going to grate this stuff up. I'm just going to cut that on an angle because that just starts the angle here, and then we do this shit. I mean, I'll maybe edit this so you don't have to put up with me fucking grating shit all the time, but it won't take long. But just pay attention when you're doing it. Leave the end of the carrot on because it's easier to hold on to it. Although actually, if you buy non-organic, that bit will be trimmed off, but this is like the green thing on the end of it. I keep holding it too high. I don't know why. Anyway. Like I said, I have been drinking slightly, so you have to apologise. Well, you don't have to, I have to apologise. Although I'm not going to. So, let's get this one going. And then for the coleslaw, we're going to keep it pretty simple. So, if you wanted to, you could do a mix of mayonnaise and yogurt to get that slightly kind of soury thing going through it. But I haven't got any yogurt. And I quite like just a bit of mayonnaise and a bit of lemon juice, and I use a splash of, let's see, oh, that's probably enough actually, although I've already peeled that one. I don't want to make too much, because coleslaw will last maybe a day or two. But it won't last much longer than that. Just, you've got to be careful with salad because of the water content. So, so I try, if I know I'm not going to be making a shit, well, if I know I'm not cooking for a lot of people, I'll try not to cook too much because it will go to waste, and you don't really want to. I try not to waste food as much as possible. So, so there's our carrots. So that was just 2 carrots. So that's like a pretty good amount. So we're just going to pop that in a bowl. And pop that to one side. Actually, we'll put that at the front so you can see it. Can you see that? Yeah, I'll get those out of the way. So, actually, we should. I'm going to grate this apple. Let's do this now. Let's get out our lovely knife. So that's our half a cabbage. So, wait a minute. I should probably just peel it with this. So just peel your apple. Now, having the waste bowl and the coleslaw bowl next to each other is probably a bad idea. I might just leave it like that. It's probably a bit easier to hold. So we're just going to grate this. You just go down one side. You're going to basically end up with 4 sides to this. Go down until you hit the core. Well, close to it. You can just sort of see it coming through a little bit there. Rotate it around by 45 degrees, 90 degrees. I'm not a mathematician, don't hold it against me. Again, down to the core, rotate again. It gets a bit tricky at this point, so just be careful. Rotate again. Sorted. There we go. Give that a little tap. To be honest, I think that's probably enough apple. So we'll just ignore what I said about the texture difference. So normally if I was making more, I'd probably do 2 more carrots to accommodate that extra apple. And we do the other apple, and I just finely slice it essentially into little like sticks. But I'm not going to do that because I don't want to waste it. And that's probably already more than enough apple really. So, and obviously because we're doing pork and apple is a really good combination. So I find it's a really good thing to add into the coleslaw. It just gives a real nice natural sweetness to it, which you want. Because I don't really want to add any other additional sweetener to the coleslaw, like sugar or anything, if I can avoid it. So because we've got this kind of slightly sweet barbecue sauce that we're working on, I think we're going to be good. So we've got our cabbage here, and this is just I don't know what Savoy cabbage is it? I don't know. Just take the outer thing off, and then we don't need a huge amount of this, so we're probably going to quarter it like that. Probably I'll take the smaller quarter for that one. Pop this in the fridge. I've got some coriander in there. I might use that. And then See, it's always hard to know the correct way to cut this. I'd never tend to really get it right, so don't worry if it doesn't quite work as you want it to. But we're gonna just really, like if you see the cabbage, I'm gonna keep this in the light, but the leaves are kind of going this way. So if we cut across that, you're gonna get a thinness like this, but we're cutting that way, so that's going to give us a really nice little slices. So once you've chopped it down like this, just figure out which way is going to work best, and then get your knife and you just shred it really, really carefully. And if you're not so good with a knife, just take your time with it. Like if you want to put the edge here and just rock down, and just take your time, and you can go really slow like this. You don't have to be quick with it. Speed will come when you cook, you know. You don't have to show off and be fancy. I've been using knives for a long time, so but just doing this, you see, you're getting really nice little shreds. And when you get better, you can then just start going a bit quicker through it and just shredding through, and doing that fancy thing where you kind of roll your knuckles over and use that to guide the blade. But you know, however you want to cut, like don't feel pressure to go quickly just because you see, you know, the pros going quickly, because you really don't want to cut yourself, and especially with a knife like this, which is like serious. It doesn't get much sharper than this, so you don't want to make a mistake. And I mean, normally with knives, it's the blunter knives where you're going to make a mistake with, that are slightly sharp but slightly blunt as well, and then they'll slip, and then that's when you'll cut yourself. But this one shouldn't really ever slip. But you want to be paying attention when you're using it, because if you get your finger in the wrong place, this thing will just take it off, basically. The guys in the shop tell a story of someone who bought one of these exact knives, and he was chopping a watermelon, and he was holding it like that, and he went down through, and he wasn't expecting it to cut so cleanly, and went straight through the end of his thumb, took it straight off, had to get it attached by the surgeon. So yeah, you do want to be careful. The plus point is, because this knife's so sharp, the surgeon actually said that it was one of the cleanest cuts that you'd ever had to, you know, reattach. So I guess, you know, silver lining and all that. So that's our little really nicely shredded cabbage. I'm just going to pop that in. I might go a little bit more with this. So we're just going to do a few more shreds. I'll probably do about half of this. And obviously what you don't use, you can just pop back in the fridge, and you can do, you know, chuck it in a soup or make some more coleslaw the next day, or I find it's better to only make really what you need rather than waste too much, because it's so easy to make this. And it doesn't really take long to develop the really nice flavors in it. So, you know, a few hours and it's good to go. So additional time doesn't really do a whole lot. So I think that's probably maybe a tiny bit more. It's good. There we go. That'll do. I'll pop that in the fridge. Or if you want to do your kind of bacon cabbage thing, that's always good. And if you've got some leftover potatoes, like bacon, cabbage, potatoes, make a really delicious thing to have with your breakfast. You just sort of like fry all that up together, and yeah. And do you see what I'm doing here? I'm using the back end of the knife to scrape along the board to collect this stuff up. You don't really, with a knife like this, want to be scraping along with the blade end, because you just don't want to fuck with the blade, really. It's so nice that, and if it slips and you go jam into yourself, that's going to be really painful. So yeah. So there we go. So we've got our coleslaw in this bowl. I didn't want to put quite as much in there because that's going to be hard to stir. So let's see if we can get a... I just burped, I do apologise. I want a slightly bigger bowl. So I'm just going to transfer that into a bigger bowl. And we'll use this smaller bowl to, actually, I'm gonna just, I've got some parsley here. A little bit of parsley is always nice, so we're just gonna, I don't know, just do about that much, not too much. And this is probably the thing I've been chopping for the longest, because this is what my mum used to get me to do when I was about 6, with a knife like this. No fucking, actually with this exact knife here, which I've had since I was 6, which is a Sabatier carbon steel knife, which is really cool. So I have that for sentimental reasons. And with this, you just want to, with parsley, just hold like a few fingers on this end just to guide the knife, and just come in and just chop like this. You can just hold down and, you know, angle along like this. But we're just really gentle. I mean, you can just do that, but I find having this on there just helps you to be a bit more precise with it and have a bit more control over the knife. And we're just going to get this kind of finely diced. Now, you do hear people say about being careful with herbs, like using like scissors or something rather than a knife, because you don't want to bruise the herbs, but that's only really if you've got a blunt knife. If you've got a really sharp knife, it's not really a problem. So if people say that, they're just not using a sharp enough knife, really. So, because you want to cut through it, you don't want to bruise, but when your knife's really sharp, it is not a problem. So, yeah. So, and I know I said not to just do that, but I just did it. But anyway, we'll do that properly. There we go. So that's a bit of parsley. So what we're going to do now is make. Now, a lot of people just dollop mayonnaise in that and stir it up and do things, but what I want to do is put mayonnaise in this bowl and mix it up and get it tasting as we want it to first. I got this yuzu stuff, which is like Japanese citrus. I'm going to use some of that because I've got it. That would be awesome. So, mayonnaise, and again, you don't want to be too crazy with it. So that's probably 2 tablespoons and a bit. Let's do that just for the minute. This is doing its thing quite nicely. You can keep this on as you're going, because you just need to keep coming back and just stirring it and make sure it's not sticking, and just let that reduce down. So, shut that. We're just going to season this really simply now. We've got some salt, and I use Maldon salt. I think it's the best. It's this might not make much sense, but it's not like particularly salty salt. It just really helps bring out flavour of stuff, but without making stuff too salty. Obviously, if you use too much of it, it will go too salty, but it's a bit more forgiving, this salt. So, yeah, this yuzu citrus is just awesome. So, let's put this over here. We're just going to do salt, pepper, and I always use freshly ground pepper. If you want a top tip, buy a Peugeot pepper grinder. And yes, Peugeot, the same as the car company. They make shit cars, but they make amazing pepper grinders, which is just so strange, but there we go. So lots of pepper. We're going to do a little splash of yuzu, probably a teaspoon. What else are we going to do? You could put a little pinch of paprika in there, but I think we're good. I mean, I want to keep it pretty simple, really. So the citrus, it gives you a sourness to it, and we're just going to literally mix that up. And there we go, you got a nice, give it a little taste. Citrusy, mayonnaisey, perfect. You could add a bit of lemon juice in it if you want, which I've got some lemon here, so I might just take a tiny little wedge off it and give it a little squeeze. Perfect. There we go. And then once you've got that mixed up and you're happy with the taste of it, we're just going to drizzle that through this bowl here with this stuff. And I wanted to put this in a bigger bowl because it's going to be a lot easier to mix it all up. And we don't want this to be too, I mean, I didn't even try to make too much. Yeah, I've already made too much, but this is a recurring thing that you're probably going to find on here, that I always make too much food. But it has meant that I've got quite good at making leftovers with with all these different sort of things I make. So that's going to be one of the features of this channel, is me cooking something big at the beginning of the week or at the weekend, and then coming up with things to do with it during the week, and trying to kind of mix it up a bit and keep things interesting, and so that's going to be one of the things. So yeah, now I'm just really mixing this up. Make sure it's really fully mixed before you maybe add any more mayonnaise, because it will all mix together quite nicely. And like I said, you don't want it to be too sort of sloppy or messy. You just want it to really lightly dress the coleslaw. Like, nothing's worse than really sloppy coleslaw, really. You just don't need that. So and if you want to get a bit more interesting and add some nice flavors into this, you can add in some fresh red chili, or even other nice salady veggies like cucumber or capsicum, or it just depends what you want to do, really. So so that's kind of good for me. Like, it's kind of it's coated really lightly, so it's moist enough to not be dry and horrible, but it's not too overly gloopy or sloppy or anything. So I think that's actually looking pretty good to me. And what you will find is that it will kind of change appearance and develop once you have it in the fridge for a bit. So at the moment, don't season it yet any more than we already have done in that sauce. So remember, that was a pinch of pepper and a good amount of pepper, a good amount of pepper and a pinch of salt, and our lemon and the yuzu. So the seasoning will develop as it sits here. So once it's been in the fridge for a bit, just trying to get everything tucked in. Once everything's been in the fridge for a bit and you get it out, just before you serve it, give it a taste and see if it needs anything. And if it does, at most it's going to need a bit of salt and a bit more pepper maybe, but I wouldn't really go beyond that. And if you, I really recommend getting one of these things. It's like a silicone lid thing, and you just pop it over, and you can pop it in the dishwasher, and it keeps food really nicely without having to use like cling film. So if you're trying to minimize your plastic usage, then this is a really good thing to use. And yes, it is sort of plastic, but you can reuse it and it will last for years. So that's one of the good things. So we're just going to pop that in the fridge, if I can find a space for it. Yes, it fits. Excellent. You could put a bit of mustard in that as well if you want, but I forgot. So we could maybe add a bit of that later, but I think we're good. We don't really need that. So yeah, so that's our coleslaw. Now our, let's come back to this. And I mean, how long's this been going in for? I don't know, it's probably about half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, however long we've been filming for since I came back to this. And as you can see, it's kind of quite a thick consistency. Sorry about the beeping. And we want to cook it. It's got a nice vinegary note to it. We want to cook it a little bit longer, I think. So that's just going to sit there and bubble away. Let's give that another 20 minutes. And I think we're good. Then we'll just turn that off and that can just chill out while the ribs finish cooking. So the next stage on the ribs is, once that's had 3 hours, we're going to get it out the barbecue, bring it out here, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what I'm going to do. Ribs have been in 3 hours. They're nice and sort of firm and kind of smoked and smelling delicious. So now what we're going to do is, did I tell you that? I can't remember if I told you the temperature that I was cooking these at. These are going at 130 degrees basically. So what I did was, once I hit the 3 hours mark, I opened it up, I spritzed with a bit of this apple cider vinegar, and then this is my barbecue sauce that we made. So I took some of this nice, rich, awesome sauce, put about an inch in there, then I put an inch of, so I keep holding it too high, put an inch of that sauce in here, then an inch of apple cider vinegar, shook it up, and that gives our like diluted sauce. I do that because I don't want it to be too sugary, so it will caramelize and burn otherwise. So, so what I did was I spritzed this while it was on the barbecue with the apple cider vinegar spritz. Then I drizzled some of this over the rib, rubbed it in, closed the lid, gave it 5 minutes so it soaked in, flipped it over, repeated that step. So apple cider vinegar sauce, rubbed it in, lid closed, 5 minutes, boom, and then it kind of all soaks in and it kind of looks like this. So as you can kind of see, it's pretty awesome. So now what we're going to do, we're going to wrap it up in foil. Get my knives out of the way. So we've got our foil, and then what we want to do is be able to have enough length to fold over and fold over. So I want 3 times this length. So that's 1, 2, 3. And then what we want to do is have the less shiny surface face down, because we want the heat to absorb in. Okay. Hang on, we're running out of room here. Fucking hell. This is a bit of a mission. We're getting there though, we're getting there. So, here we go. We've got our foil here. Now what we're going to do, we're going to give this a little spritz with our apple cider vinegar. Then we're going to do a bit of, oh Jesus, just spooged everywhere. Do apologise. Then we're going to do a little drizzle of this sauce in here. This is just to get this kind of about the length of those ribs. We don't need too much. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our delicious ribs and we're going to put this face down on there. Beautiful. Hang on, just got to. I forgot my one hand rule. So there we go, that's that. I might just do a little drizzly drizzle of that as well. And then what we're going to do, we're going to fold this over like this. And then we're going to fold this one over. What we want to do is just keep this completely sealed up. And actually what I should have done there, this is from this Franklin's barbecue guy who gave this tip. You should check the edges for sharp bits, because you don't, because as it's shrunk cooking, we'll just open that up. You don't want pointy sharp bits to poke through the foil and let all the A, steam out and B, liquid out. So, but I think we're okay. So we fold that over. Then we're going to fold this one over here, keeping it nice and tight, like that. What if there was a different way he did this? I can't remember. Maybe he did it and folded it over and then folded that over. I can't. There was a way that he did this. Oh, fuck it. As long as it's sealed up, I think we're good. So we're going to fold that over like that. Let's just tuck that one under there, like that, seal that up. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we want to flatten that out, tuck this under here, like under the ribs, just find the thingy, and I'm sure we did this in a better way, but anyway, we'll I might just fold those up like that maybe, just to seal those in. And then we're gonna just fold that in. And maybe we'll do it like a Christmas present, as it is Christmas. I'm gonna fold that in, turn it round, tuck that under there, bring that up. Well, they don't meet in the middle, so fuck it. We'll figure this out. Really, I needed more foil, but I was supposed to buy more foil, but I forgot. I wonder if I can just, or maybe we can just about make that, do that and then fold that on each other. You're kind of seeing me just wing this as I go pretty much. This is a bit of a first for me with this technique. So here we go, tuck that in. I think that's pretty good. I mean, everything's tucked in, and I mean, maybe with these corner bits here, just fold those up slightly. So if any liquid does want to try and get out, then he can't get out of them, you see? That is science. And there we go. We're just gonna now pop this back on the barbecue for 2 hours with the heat around that 135 mark, just a slightly higher temp, and then that can just do its thing. And then now, theoretically now, the fat is gonna render, yeah, the fat's gonna render out and go, it'll make it go all juicy. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so here we go. This is our rib that we've brought out of the barbecue, having wrapped it all, and we're gonna just unwrap. It's been resting for about 30 minutes, so it's still hot, but not too hot, so should be good eating temperature. So we're just gonna open her up and try and use a chopping board with a little ridge around it, because it could be really juicy. So we will see. So I'm just going to unwrap, and hopefully we're going to have some delicious, tasty ribs. So then this is going to be the underside that we're uncovering here. So hopefully when we uncover this bad boy, we're going to have lots of nice juicy sauce in there. Ooh, here we go. And then I'm going to just flip her over, and it should be, look at that, delicious. I was hoping for a little bit more sauce, but I think we're good. I do have extra sauce in my little bowl from earlier, because we only used a small amount. So here we go. So we're going to just find the, I don't think I need a serrated, I think I just need, these things will just pull apart. I've just got my little knife out, I think. That chunky, delicious, porky, nice and tender, not too dry. It's got a bit of bite to it still, hopefully. Just got to try and find, I don't know what happened there. We've got a bit of a weird shape going on, some big chunky thing. I mean, that will just pull apart, I think, and that just is a big chunky end bit. So yeah, looking pretty good. So look at those. Looking pretty juicy. It's got a nice colour to it, and then see if it'll, is it going to focus? Who knows? I don't know if that focuses. I'm going to try a bit and see. Tender, smoky, delicious. Right, you don't want to hear me eating though, so we're just going to plate it up. I'm just going to get some nice tasty middle bits of the rib. That's a big chunky bit, look at that. Delicious. I'm just going to get a little, so this is that sauce from earlier. I think I'm going to just, and this is cooled down, but you know, this will be great like straight from the fridge, just use it in sandwiches or whatever. I'm just going to put a little kind of dollop here. I'm not very good at presentation. I probably should be. So we're going to grab some of our coleslaw that we made earlier. Now's the time, so if you remember, I said not to really season a whole lot more than sort of where we had got to. So we're just going to stir it up now. And it's looking pretty good as the coleslaw goes. So now what I sometimes like to do, let's just try a bit. Yeah, it's pretty good. I wouldn't want to go much beyond that really in terms of seasoning. What I will do though is we're going to serve it with some pickles, but what I like to do with this stuff, so this is just like these really good pickles. There's going to be a little splash of this pickle water in there just to give it a bit of a lift, and I might just give it a little bit of salt and a little touch more pepper, just a little hint more. I think the lemony sort of souriness to it is about right from the vinegars we've put in, especially now I've put in a bit of that pickle water. That's pretty good as coleslaw goes, really fresh, not too rich from the mayonnaise. Yeah, pretty good. We'll just put a little, nice little bit on there. Here we go, it's probably enough. And then I love these kind of pickles, and it'll go really well with the, here we go. I think that's good. A few little pickles on the side there, maybe one more. The little bugger will come out. Perfect. Look at that. And there we go. Our nice slow cooked ribs in a very traditional Texan barbecuey way. Got a little bit of dipping sauce on the side there. Put this back in the fridge. And there we go. It's pretty simple. It takes a bit of time, but you know, the coleslaw was pretty simple as you saw when I was making that. And that'll last a couple of days in the fridge. So if you make too much like I did, even though I tried not to, it'll be fine for the next day, maybe even the day after, but I wouldn't go more than that really. So these ribs will keep, just wrap them up in foil. What you don't eat, stick them in the fridge. And then you can just put that foil pack in the oven on sort of, again, around 130 degrees, and just sort of let that slowly cook through, and they'll be great the next day as well. So yeah, so there's my ribs. Pretty damn good. I'm trying to do it reversed in the, yeah, pretty tasty. So tuck in, there we go. And if you can have it with some potato salad if you want, but I'm trying to minimize my potato intake at the moment because I eat far too much potato. So yeah, there we go guys. That's my rib recipe with my barbecue sauce. Give me a share, hit like, hit subscribe. If you enjoyed that video, we'll put some more up soon. I'm going to go through some cooking techniques in the next few videos, and also just go through some of my favourite but sort of simple recipes and just my way that I cook them. Nothing's going to be too overly fancy or complicated. It's just kind of like how I do stuff really. So, and then we'll get a bit more elaborate sometimes and have a bit of fun with some stuff. So if you've got any suggestions, then hit me up in the comments, or recipes that you want me to try out and put my spin on, then let me know. So yeah, cheers for tuning in, everyone. And that's my slow cooked, I guess, Texas style barbecue ribs. So cheers for tuning in, and we'll be back soon. Bye.